What's up? Namaste, friends. Stormie Calder here. In this video, I'm going to dive into the part 3 on sharing about light and shadow, dominance and submission and power, and how to contain and wield and work with that power. I didn't know that I was going to be so excited about this topic, but I am, because I think it really, truly describes almost like what it is to be spiritual. Yes, I'm putting it in big air quotes because, when we're spiritual, when we are in integrity, it's really about understanding, or at least a large aspect of it is understanding our own power, where we place our power, where we displace our power, how we are empowered, and how accountable and responsible we are for our own power. When we have it, when we have lots of it, what do we do with it? Are we little maniacs? Do we abuse others with it, intentionally or unintentionally? When we have our power, do we freak out, abuse ourselves, and throw it away, give it to someone else to pass that responsibility on to someone else? I think a lot of spirituality can be distilled down to understanding power dynamics. If you can understand someone's power, how they embrace their power, how they displace their power, where they send it, where they refuse responsibility, where they refuse accountability, where they do claim responsibility and accountability, I think you can size that person up pretty quickly and understand exactly how light dominant or shadow dominant they are. When I say light dominant, it's like, how much light quotient can they hold in their body? How much light can they hold in their body? I would think that as like, how much integrity do you have with your word, with your truth, with your choice, with your responsibility, with who you are, with your own confidence, without pressure, and with your power. And even as I'm sitting with this, I'm like, you know what? I probably don't allow anyone in my life that has like a below threshold of an A-. I like straight A's in my life when it comes to light quotient. I'm looking for 93 to 98% light dominance. So this is why I think dominance and submission are important to dive into and to describe. Also because I talk about it from the terms of dominance and submission, because that is how my spirit guides trained me into understanding fast dynamics to make good and powerful decisions without harming myself or others. When you listen to other people, other spiritual practitioners and communities will refer to it as surrender. Oh God, I hate the word surrender. I'm not going to lie. Why do I hate the word surrender? Not because I actually hate surrendering, but because surrender can be done in submissive positions where you have no position surrendering to the power that's higher, which could be a God power. It could be an authority figure in your life. It could be an authority figure out of your life that's not currently present, but that is pressing their power on you spiritually, metaphysically, energetically. And you could be submitting to that higher power because it's a greater level of power, but it's a darker power and you shouldn't be submitting to it. You shouldn't be surrendering to it. Excuse me. There's my little release. I'm releasing the energy as I'm speaking. And I think the reason why my spirit guides brought my attention to dominance versus submission is because it is so fundamentally, it's such a fundamental aspect of understanding in the primal mind, because we understand sex, we understand sexual power, and that from that reference that allows us to understand our power, because our power is Shakti power. It's a sexual power by nature, a creative power by nature, but we use that power through dominance for whatever the hell it is we're doing through the day. And if you don't love your life, you're probably too submissive. I gotta be real honest. I'm not that submissive. Not when it comes to light, not when it comes to my power. But you guys have to understand, it's not power for the sake of power. It's power with direction and focus and desire and will, with causality in combination with your higher spiritual guardians, your higher spiritual team, your actual higher power, not necessarily powers that are higher around you. Okay. when you meet people that are truly balanced in their light dominance, their light force, they don't come off like they are necessarily dominating. They just come off like you can't fuck with them. These are the people that like refuse to be pulled down into the shit landscape, refuse to be miserable when either their circumstances say they should or everyone else around them says they should. And they continue to hold a high bar. They hold high standards emotionally for the people around them. They hold high standards of thought and belief. And they hold high standards of what they can do and achieve in this world because it is what it takes. That is light dominance. Not to be confused with shadow power dominance where you're overpowering people, okay? Maybe we'll get into that later, but I don't know. Okay. 6 minutes in, what's going on? If you are new here, my name is Stormie Calder. I am your most authentic spiritual coach. I read the energy in between the worlds. I read our goals, our missions, at the soul level. Like I read the soul and I read the energy in between all of the things you can't see right now, all this energy. I can read it and I can understand the intentions and the focus. And what I do is I use that for myself, the people around me, the group and communities that I'm in, as well as my clients, to perceive the gap in between who we are and where we're going. So I am not a medium or a psychic in the way that I'm trying to read lots of other people. I'm trying to read how to get you from one place to another place in the future, where you have access to more of your empowerment, where you have access to more resources, where you have access to more love and happiness and fulfillment. And that's how I use my gifts. Okay, so if that's your vibe, subscribe, my friends. Okay. I want to jump in a little bit more here. I'm also going to get cozy. Oh, gosh. What I love about bringing in dominance and submission into the land of spirituality is I think it really gets your attention. I know it really got my attention with my spirit guides. And I know that at the primal mind, I understood exactly what my spirit guides were saying to me when they would be like, that person's dominant or that person's submissive, or, oh, Stormie, you're being a little too submissive. We need you to exercise your power and get really dominant in this situation. And I would start to understand very quickly at a primal level, like with instinct, oh, what move to make, how to gather my power. Because when we talk in terms of dominance versus submission, it becomes primal. It becomes an automatic instinctual awareness of your primal soul, of the activation of your body. Like, you know how to move when you hear those words. I'm not saying there aren't issues with it. A lot of people have stumbling blocks there, but we'll get to that at another point. When we think in terms of spirituality, another way we could wash this out. I love just speaking in terms of dominance and submission because it's how I think. It's just black, white, fact-friendly, clear, easy to understand. Who's the most dominant power in any moment? And is that dominant power safe? Is always the question. And no matter what people you're around, there's always a dominant power in the room. That dominant power could be used for ill or for good, and it depends on their level of consciousness. Now, here's a trip for you guys that are conscious. If you are the most conscious person in the room, you are the most dominant power in the room. Now, if you choose to not acknowledge your level of consciousness and submit and allow other people to do everything and pretend like you don't see what's going on behind the scenes, or pretend like you're not listening to your intuition, then what you do is you become the dominant shadow power in the room. Which doesn't mean you become abusive. It depends on what side of the spectrum you fall under. For people, a lot of empaths, a lot of women tend to claim that as self-harm. Just thinking negatively about the self-shame, right? Self-loathing. People that are a little more overconfident, that are rooted in their pride and their ego, which is generally a little bit more masculine of a trait, will then become a little more outwardly abusive with that power. with that shadow power, which can be putting people down. It could be having excessive pride, things like that. Okay, so that's something interesting I wanted to share. Now, let me think. What I love about the dominance and submission around spirituality is because it's just the opposite of what most people think about what it is to be spiritual. People are like, oh, what do you mean? That sounds like sex. And it's like, what's not spiritual about sex? It's just about the fastest way to understand someone's consciousness is to understand their sex life. You can be conscious as hell by yourself meditating. You can be hyper aware in spiritual community, doing yoga, doing the things that you're supposed to do where you know how to act. And then whenever we go into private space and intimacy, any shadow that can come up will. There's no escaping it. It's your shadow. Whatever you haven't integrated will come up. So that's where I like to spend a lot of my time and my consciousness and my understanding. I, of course, navigate all of the higher realms all of the time, but I spend an equal amount of time doing shadow work. I spend an equal amount of time exploring lower chakras. So power, sex, money, relationship, power. Comes back to power, okay? Power. Root chakra stuff, man. I really like balance and understanding the balance of forces. So here's what I wanted to say. Light naturally dominates. I know I mentioned that in the last video, and if you didn't catch the previous 2 videos in this series, I highly recommend you go watch them and check them out because they're all kind of building on certain concepts around dominance and submission spiritually, understanding light and shadow around these terms that will trigger your primal instinct a little bit more, which helps it actually settle into your understanding. It's easier to understand the primal instinct than it is like higher level spiritual instinct. I'm going to be honest. The second we start grounding these concepts into the body, into sex, power, and money, like when they're done well, people just get it. They get it more quickly. Now, that doesn't mean they have mastery over it. It takes way longer to master your lower chakras than it does the higher ones, okay? But the truth is that light naturally dominates. And I'm going to explain this in a few ways. But first of all, if light weren't to dominate, you would not be highly spiritual. You would be run by your shadow. You would be some average Joe or some basic B out in the world, just like clocking in your 9 to 5, doing your stuff, not paying attention to anything else in the world, listening to your news, like eating your macaroni. Like, I don't know. I don't even know. I don't even know what basic people do. Okay. I don't know. I don't have friends in this category. But because you're interested in spirituality, your light grows. Now, of course, your shadow grows in proportion to your light, but you'll notice when your shadow gets out of balance because you start getting negative synchronicities. Stuff starts to catch up to you, karma, negative events. So that's when we start to increase our dominance over the light. Light is consciousness, and consciousness naturally dominates. Period. End of story. It's not like, I will dominate you, get underneath me. Ah. Like, it's not like that. Okay? Be patient with my act outs, please. Light dominates in consciousness because knowledge is power. And when you're highly perceptive and highly observant, and if you are observing and perceiving from a place of accuracy, then you are in power. You are in knowledge. You are in understanding, which is, generally speaking, to have light. It is to have consciousness. Now, this isn't a rule, okay? I feel like I do this all the time in my videos. I'm like, oh God, Brett, there are so many ways that can get out of hand, and I need to describe them all, and I can't right now. So we're going to stick to topic. I'm more telling myself than you. I'm also telling those of you that think like, when you get pseudo-intellectual and you're observant, you're like, I see that. What I'm telling you is, whoa, Nelly, slow down. Being prideful in that way does not make you conscious. It's a fine line to teeter here, okay? But anyway, when you're conscious, you are in your light power. That light power gives you the consciousness to handle whatever the hell your shadow is doing or other people's shadows are doing behind the scenes in any moment. And ideally, we want to catch up with the shadow power by raising awareness to what is going on in any time. The faster we raise in consciousness and in vibration, the faster you have to catch up to whatever the F your shadow and other people's shadows are doing behind the scenes. There is no way around it. You're not just going to raise your vibe and just be like, "Wah!" like the more you raise your frequency, especially when you have exponential growth, your shadow is going to get a surge of power. And it's like an inner child demon that like has never had that much power before. And it's like, how many ways can I hide this power from the adult light persona and find the boundaries and mess around? And like, it's, you know, it like does its thing. So you got to stay on top of it. Now with that, you want to think about the shadow like training a dog. So when I'm talking dominance and submission, I want to start to soften these words because they can sound so aggressive. But the aggression behind it allows you to tap into the primal instinct. And then we're going to soften it. I'm going to give you some conscious awareness and some understanding here. So think about it like training a dog. If you have a dog, and I don't like to think of people as owners or masters, I think of them as companions, but you are under care and guardianship and ownership over an animal, right? That animal is under your care. Now, if you want a well-behaved dog, you absolutely have to train it. I would put a little ping there for positive reinforcement training. Thank you very much. But you need to train the dog. The act of training the primal animal that has primal instinct is creating a hierarchy of consciousness where the one who is doing the training is the one in dominance, and the one that is being trained is the one in submission. I want you to know that these roles can switch, even with an animal. Like, your dog can train you as much as you train it, and it may be very unconscious. Right? I'm like, can we have an example? I don't know. When I had a puppy, she would always try to come on the bed, and I'd be like, no. I'd be like, you're being crate trained. Like, I would love to have you on the bed with me, but I know that that's not actually love. You're actually just training me to submit to your needs when I know better. So it's kind of an example like that. Those relationship roles can change. They're not just a one-way street. So in the ever landscape of consciousness, it's like, oh, which is which? Which side are we on today? Like, who's dominant, who's submissive? And again, I love those terms because I like to think of higher power in terms of power surrounding. What elements, what is in power, what is in consciousness, how conscious is it? Because big power doesn't necessarily mean it's conscious. It just means it has power, but it could be conscious, but it might not be. Anyway, I'm probably overcomplicating that for the moment, but dominance is about hierarchy. It's what has more either power, light, or consciousness than something else. And I like to think of dominance, instead of it being like dominating, I really like to soften the word dominance because it's really just a claiming. It's a taking up space. It's a guiding. It's a leadership. It's being courageous. It's being brave. These are all the dominant traits. I think of dominant traits like social hierarchy, like the way that evolution takes place in natural organic ascension or evolution of beings, is that whatever traits are dominant are the traits that make it into the next generation. So I want you to think of dominance not as something that's like heavy or overruling or authoritative, but dominance as in the greatest presence of the best possible traits that will actually lead and steer you and others around you into natural and organic growth and evolution that feels safe from a position of leadership. Like natural dominance is like a natural king or queen of the jungle, like a natural lion. A lion is naturally dominant. You know, it's not like I feel like when people think of dominance, it's like dominance, like rah, and it's no. It's a state that is natural within your own evolution and the evolution of others. It is a natural state of evolutionary consciousness. So I like to think about dominance as not something aggressive, but like a soft container. It's almost like an offering. It's like, well, what are your strengths? I have a lot of strengths, and I see those strengths as dominance. It's how I dominate. I'm not one of those people that goes out into my relationships and dominates them. That's not that's not who I am. I'm very go with the flow. I'm very sweet. The way that my traits steer me in terms of dominance, just to give you an example, is that I can pivot very quickly. I can change my perspective near immediately. I can gather information and accurately size up situations to keep myself and others safe. These are all survival traits, and they are dominant traits, meaning in more situations than not, I will survive and those around me will survive without getting hurt. Okay, while remaining safe. It's a natural state of evolution. It feels very natural to me. And I like that I'm describing it in this way because I really don't feel like anyone thinks about dominance or submission this way. It's very natural. It's very safe in the way that I'm describing it. There are other ways I could describe it that I won't because it doesn't prove my point. It doesn't make any sense from this position. But just to give you just see my Libra self. I'm like, there are a million ways we can look at this situation. I'm like, chill out, Stormie. Stop it. Stop it. Save the peanut gallery for a different video. You need to focus. This is me and my shadow. Okay, so think about dominance like a container. It's just a container. It's not something meant to chew or eat up other things. It's just a container. It's a strong container of energy. It's an unyielding, unwavering, safe container of energy held by both men and women. Okay? What I love about the word dominance is that the second I say that word, your shadow starts to listen. Your shadow's like, what? Did you say power? The shadow is the most unruly parts of ourselves, and it needs to be trained. I have a very good relationship with my shadow because I train and I work with my shadow like an inner child. I look to understand the needs of my shadow. I've been doing this for years and years. It took me years to figure this out within myself. But I would sit down and meditate with my shadow. I'd be like, what do you need? And I'd be like, okay, well, that's a little unreasonable. like, can we find a balance? Like I used to negotiate with my shadow. So when you start to use the term dominance, I know all of your shadows are tuned into this stream. What that is a perfect example of a learning opportunity for your shadow, which is why I use the word dominance, because your shadow is starting to understand the consciousness of what it is to have power, have hierarchy, natural evolution, leadership. And what that does is it trains the shadow into submission, not from the position of having to lose power, but from the position of being an animal instinct, like a dog that you love, that you are a guardian with, like you're a guardian over your dog. And the shadow starts to say, that human's got me. That human's gonna feed me 3 square meals a day and let me sleep on their bed tonight. Or whatever it is. Human. Well, maybe I should relax. And I'm being so honest with you, and you guys can let me know in the comments below. Tune into yourself and see, is my shadow starting to relax? Because it very well might be, just from this conversation online. So as the shadow, as the primal instinct and power begins to understand the relationship to you, your light, your adult, your consciousness, it starts to relax in the understanding that it's no longer fighting you necessarily, that you are the guardian of the shadow power that is the primal force, the primal source, and that you enjoy the primal source like you enjoy your dog. But we do have rules in this society. In most areas, you do need to place a leash on your dog in order to go for a walk. I mean, I don't know. I'm in Los Angeles. Like, I don't think most places you can walk with a dog off leash, even though we would love to, right? So it's almost like this subtle training within your shadow of telling your shadow, like, I hear you. I know we want to run free and be feral, but we're not going to be feral because we live in society and society's got some rules, and I'm going to be really reasonable with you because I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to give you what you need. I'm going to make sure you're not over-dominated in relationships, but that you have ways to healthily express your power. I'm going to look after you. I'm going to give you time to play. I'm going to use positive reinforcement to train you, which is ideal. You can't shame your power. I mean, you could try to, you cannot shame your power into submission. Let me tell you right now, if you shame your power, you are giving it negative power that it will use against you tomorrow. Like, it's just going to happen. You cannot shame your power into submission. The only way that the shadow works to submit, and submit, not from the position of like, get under my shoe. Submit as in like, shadow, relax. Like, I got you. I'm going to go feed your dog bowl full of your favorite food, and I'm going to give you a bunch of treats. And then we're going to go play with a couple of your best friends. And like, when we go to the park in 2 hours, do you want to go for a walk? And your shadow's like, oh, she thought about me. Oh my God, yeah, I want to go for a walk. But what you don't understand is that your shadow, between the time of you not talking to it and you not telling it what your intentions are and you not saying like, I'm going to take care of you, your shadow is brooding. Your shadow is having a shit fit. Your shadow is saying, they don't like me. Nothing about me works. Your shadow is looking to get attention like an unruly animal because it doesn't know that it's loved. And this is a long practice. But the more we understand training our shadow, the shadow doesn't like to be trained. It's more like creating a safe container where the shadow can live under our guardianship. Training. My shadow's okay with it at this point. She's like, yeah, you were right. You were right. And you probably should have had a stronger hold on me years ago because I did some wild shit that I had no business doing. Lived in experience, my friends. I could talk about it all day. I have lived this human life well. Okay, that's what I've got there. I think I'm going to leave this video here. Thank you for joining me. If you did like this, please like the video. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. And because I've gotten a big flux of many new subscribers recently, I feel like I need to reestablish where I am in the market. I specifically am in service to women in their enlightenment path, in their personal development path, in their spiritual awakening. That is who I serve the most. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I've had a lot of men that I think are out of target or out of market for me coming to my profile. So if you are a woman, subscribe, please, sweetheart. I'm so here for this, and I really think you're going to love my content. Also, if you are a woman in enlightenment looking to create a safe and simple awakening path, because spiritual awakening is not easy, and it actually is rather dangerous in many, many ways that I can speak to in tremendous amounts of experience that I think I do in a couple videos on my live streams at least. I would love to invite you into my monthly membership, The Source Code. It's a framework of safe feminine ascension that is based off of elemental understanding, like working with lesser known arcane shamanic practices that more have to do with how you think, how you perceive, how you believe, and how you pursue your own faith, as well as integrating your human personality, your shadow, and understanding how to work with your own divine power, your higher power, how to get access to that power, how to tap into it, how to understand how the universe works, how to understand how enlightenment works, especially for women. I do an amazing job of explaining it. I've got lots of masterclasses, lots of videos that I drip through the week, curated posts, written posts. There's a community in there. We are vibing. I do pop-up group calls as well. So if you want group coaching from me and group reading from me intuitively, this is the space to get it. Yeah, and that's what I've got. So I'd love to invite you guys to come join me in the Source Code. I will leave a link in the description below where you can learn all about it. Feel free to send me an email if you're wondering if it's the right fit for you, or you have any questions or wonder, just any questions you might have. So that's what I've got. Gosh, Thank you, my loves, for joining me in this video and this series. And again, I will link in the description below part 1 and part 2 so you can catch up on dominance and submission spiritually. And that's what I got. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you guys in the next video. Lots of love.